we got to face reality. And the reality is that most men don't have a clue what this is doing to their brain over the years and years and years of use. Their ability to have an incredible relationship with a person they want to do their life with, and the impact it's having on their family, and the fact that they're about to lose all of that. That's when they finally realize this is much more than what they thought it was. Today's topic that we're going to be talking about is...
how can he stop the intrusive thoughts?
So we kind of took a poll a few days ago to see what it is that a lot of you are going through and what you would like to hear us talk on. And this was a real common thing that was mentioned is like, okay, when he's experiencing these things, why and how do we make it stop? And how do I handle it when what do I do as the betrayed partner? What can he do about it? So we really wanted to get into some more details about that because it is really difficult. It is one of the most difficult parts of this is to have these things happening even when he no longer wants them to be happening, right? And I think that, Rick, I'm sure you can really speak to how it feels when you're like, oh, well, yeah, I thought this was going to be easy. And I totally decided this isn't something I want in my life anymore. And then it didn't just turn off just because you made that decision, right?
Yeah, it was such complete uninformed optimism that I had. And if I would have even paused in that moment and known to pause in that moment to really reflect on some of the other things that I've overcome in my life, like quitting my addiction to cigarettes for about, I was addicted and smoked cigarettes for about 13 years. So if I would have reflected on that and thought about, okay, what was that experience really like? It wasn't a walk in the park, that's for sure. And for some reason for this, I was like, oh yeah, like didn't even think anything of it like it was an actual addiction, and quickly found out, no, this really is an addiction. Even if it's not classified as an addiction, as in the DSM-5 handbook, even if we personally feel like we don't want to call it an addiction because we don't want to view ourselves as an addict, it doesn't matter. It's really about what are the different challenges that we're facing that are going to come up in our journey of ending our use, quitting our relationship with pornography, and working towards a truly monogamous relationship.
Right. And it's about the impact on the brain and what it is like when there is a dependency on something that you can't stop doing, even when it's hurting you or hurting people you love, right? Like if we want to toss the word addiction, sure, whatever, but we got to face reality. And the reality is that most men don't have a clue what this is doing to their brain over the years and years and years of use. And they have normalized it because society's normalized it. So it makes sense that there's this dependency on something that has always been in their life, has programmed their brain to see women in a certain way or see sex in a certain way. And once they are realizing the impact that that's had on their ability to have an incredible relationship with a person they want to do their life with, and the impact it's having on their family, and the fact that they're about to lose all of that for a screen, right, and not a real relationship. That's when they finally realize this is much more than what they thought it was. And it takes getting to that point for most men to ever actually consider this an addiction or consider it something that they need to get help with. So, yeah, let's talk first about, maybe you can kind of speak to what's happening in the brain for men when they are like, oh, yeah, okay, I see this as an issue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing my family or my partner any favors here by going outside of our relationship for my needs and for my desires, and I'm not giving her my attention and making her feel chosen or loved, and I'm not having the closeness and connection I want. So yeah, I'm done. Like, what's happening for men when they get to that point and they're still, despite recognizing this is a problem, they're still experiencing all of these intrusive thoughts?
Mm-hmm. Whew. Oh man, there's a lot that goes into it. But I think some of the most important things to kind of address at the beginning of answering that question is just how polarizing the differences between the woman's experience and the man's experience, and really acknowledging that for the majority of men that we talk with, and for my personal experience, very much what was going on was that I didn't know what it meant to even have emotional needs when we started this process, and didn't realize that I was even going outside of my relationship. I had very much thought that it wasn't cheating. It took me a very long time to really come to terms of understanding logically and emotionally how it actually was and is cheating. And so there's just so many different disconnects in my understanding, and a lot of the men that we work with, their understanding as they're coming in to work with us, of what it really means to be addicted to pornography. And so, sorry, I lost the
what's happening in the brain for them when they're still
Right.
experiencing these types of thoughts, even when they don't want to be. Like, why is that happening?
And so, yeah, it's just brain patterns. So you really have to look at this at a scientific level. I know that there's a lot of different programs out there that are different. Like, some are more science-based, some are more spiritual-based. And I think that you can really have a middle ground where you can allow for some of the benefits that you can get from the spiritual approach, along with looking at it from a scientific approach. But really, when we're looking at why is he experiencing these things, that really comes from the scientific approach. So it all comes down to the fact that we have different pathways in our brains that are what form our habits over the years, and they exist literally as a physical piece of us, and they grow in size the more that we use specific pathways. And so even when we decide to quit, our brain has not yet built new pathways to resolve their emotional, like our brain's emotional needs, its chemical balances, through other means. So there's a developmental process that has to take place in order to really to get rid of these different cravings and unwanted and intrusive thoughts that begin happening once you abstain from pornography.
Yeah, and I'm just going to pause you real quick, because what you said is a really important key here. Is it's a developmental process. And I actually read a post the other day from somebody else that was also educating about this issue. And the way that she described it was that there is like, when men feel like they don't have the ability, it's not just a decision, right? Like, it's because there's a developmental process that is lacking. There was not the developmental process that needed to happen that would make this feel like a decision. And so there's a lot of complex, things to understand about that and why, but essentially, we've got a dysfunctional parts of the brain that are not functioning as they would normally if it were a healthy brain that never had an addiction to pornography. So when it comes to what's happening for him, yeah, it's the brain patterns that have been established over many, many, many years and many, many repetitions. And it's not just the one, it's many of them. Like, even when it comes to the way that something is paid attention to, right? So like, we talk about the reticular activating system. If you haven't heard that, that's basically the part of the brain that's designed to, its role or job is to filter everything that we're experiencing and only really pay attention to the things that are most important. Because we only have a limited capacity for what we can actually focus on consciously. So the brain has been programmed over all this time to pay attention to women and their body parts as objects and to find them attractive and arousing, right? So that is one of the things that's happening, is a brain pattern that is looking and scanning for these things that are attractive.
Right. And that's true for a lot of men. Not every man experiences it the same way. So it really depends on how each individual is experiencing life, how they are engaging in unfaithful thoughts that lead them to the pornography. But in large part, for the majority of people that we talk with, that is the experience. But there's definitely some different things. Like, we've also worked with men where it's more about not necessarily thinking about women and objectifying them solely for their body parts, but more fantasizing about the experiences in different situations with women. That's more about the act of fantasy versus just like solely focusing on the body parts.
Yeah, it
so
can
there's
be
definitely
different for each person.
Yeah,
But I guess I was
variables
more
there.
speaking in generalizations from what we hear from most
Right.
circumstances.
Yeah, I just wanted to
It
point
can
out
be
that
different.
we are kind of overgeneralizing a little bit, but that is for the most people that we talk to the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, but it all comes down to the brain patterns, exactly what you were saying. And once we are no longer wanting to have a brain pattern there, like we can even compare this to something like chocolate, like if we're chocoholics or if we like for me, I used to be highly addicted to sweets and sugar. So once I decided I didn't want to be eating sugar and desserts all the time and I wanted to lose weight, it wasn't like, oh yeah, now I don't want sugar anymore.
Mhm.
You know, we have to recognize that there is very intentional effort that has to go into change and allowing the brain to change. And unfortunately, as women, it's like, well, like how do we handle waiting for his brain to change? Like how do we, like, it creates so much disturbance when we know that our partner that we love and we're committed to faithfully is objectifying and lusting and desiring people outside of our relationship. It is so difficult. Or also the concept of like, well, when, if he can't control this and he's going to relapse, like, how can I make that not happen? Like, women feel trapped to their home once they realize how often, this comes up in their partner's mind and how their pulls and cravings to want to do it. And that they know that it's when they're gone, that is a really high likelihood of when that's going to happen. So yeah, women feel trapped to their home. They feel hypervigilance. They feel like a complete lack of control. They can't trust their partner anymore. They don't fully understand addiction. So they're angry at them for why they can't just make a different choice. Like, it's just absolutely overwhelming to be going through this at all.
Yeah. I think it really highlights the problem of so many of us included, have uninformed optimism of, we can do this if we just find the right information and we stick to it, then we're going to be okay. And most commonly, what happens is that there's not an ability for most couples that we talk with, and even some couples that we do talk with, where there is an ability for the woman, like she's already done enough research and like literally been spending years on this, that she can understand more from her partner's side. But then there's still the disconnect of like, why aren't things making sense for him? How come when I come to him with information and I'm sharing these things, it's not something that he feels like he has it's not compelling for him to want to engage and seek out this information and really have cravings to be working on himself in this area.
There still disconnects there for him. Why is there not a complete empathy for the impact? And yeah, there's a lot of stuff there. So moving on to the next point that we were going to speak on today, we want to get into like what can each of you do and what shouldn't you do, right? So the first one is what not to do for him and for her. And so I don't know if anything comes to mind right now for you about what he shouldn't do or what she shouldn't do.
Yeah, I mean, so kind of building off of that last piece that I was talking about, where most couples that we're talking with and working with get to this point where they just completely, like, they know that they love each other. They know that they want to be in the relationship. They want to see things through, but they're just stuck. And part of that getting stuck is just the ability to really understand each other's emotional needs and communicate in a way that allows them to both each hold their own truth and their partner's truth.
Right.
For the man and the woman, like they're both holding their truth and their partner's truth. And so when we talk about like what not to do, is when we're in conversation, if you haven't got help yet and you're trying to do this on your own, what not to do is not to take your experience and push it onto your partner and try and make them feel like they should see something differently or understand something differently than what they do. If they don't currently share the same understanding as you do, then communicating to them in a way that feels shameful or guilting or like there's something wrong with them is going to only perpetuate and exacerbate the problems.
Yeah. So I guess I agree. And I think what you're saying is if he doesn't have the right help to know what he needs to do to change these things and to learn the things he needs to do, or the help to make the connections, then it's not right to shame him for not understanding things, right? So there needs to be a real clear, structured way that he can know what he needs to do to work on these things in order to have it change. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, one of the hardest things where women are like, but he's not seeking it out. Like he's not going and finding that help. And it makes sense if you really think about it, because the urgency for change is there for you because you're in pain every day. You understand what is going on here. You're being betrayed. He's going outside of your relationship. You're feeling the hurt of that. And you are recognizing the addiction and you have urgency for it to change because you're in pain every day. The disconnect, unfortunately, for him is that he doesn't get that at this point. For most men, they don't have the same urgency because they don't have the same experience that you're experiencing. And they don't yet understand how this is really impacting you. Even when you tell him, even when he's seeing you cry, you may think, oh yeah, he totally understands. No, he doesn't. He really doesn't. And there's definitely, a gap there that has to be bridged, and it takes time and it takes help. It takes the right help, the right different ways to understand things in a new way so that he does make those connections. So that's where, when we say what not to do, I'd say what not to do is not to try and do this alone. Don't try to shame him for not having all the answers figured out, and that you should know everything you know and should know exactly how you're feeling, and don't try to do this alone. Mm-hmm. So we'll get to do in a sec. Is there anything else that you would say for the men not to do when they're feeling the intrusive thoughts specifically? Because I think that's what people are probably really looking for, like the actual thing when it's happening, what not to do.
Yeah. I'm going to have you re-ask me that in a minute here.
Okay,
because
so you have more to say.
Before we go into that, I just want to kind of like speak up on women's behalf too for a moment, because I know that we each are the way that we are for valid reasons. Like we've all developed into the people that we are for valid reasons. So there's going to be some women who are watching this who are like, oh crap, that's me. Like I totally shame him. I totally guilt him. When these things happen, like how could I not possibly get angry? Yeah. How could I not possibly get angry and, just throw in his face, whatever it is that makes such clear sense to me, and, try and lay it out there for him to understand. So I just want to give grace for understanding too, that it makes sense that you're responding in those ways, because that's likely the different social and family influences that you had that taught you to respond in that way when you are trying to...
Well, when you're attacked or when you're betrayed, when you're right. And so it's pretty natural.
Yeah, when there's an emotional disconnect and you want somebody else to do the things that you want, it's like we learn to push our anxiety onto them without actually having healthy communication. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one of the biggest things to highlight, is that so many of us just don't know what it really looks like to be able to have healthy communication, to both hold our own truth and allow ourselves to feel the pain of what it is that we're going through, and then also like give ourselves time to process that, and then also have conversation about what's going on for the other person as well. But that needs to be reciprocal. Mm-hmm. If like that's where like the real healing growth comes from, is when both partners reach a place where
they know how to do that.
Right. They've had enough development and enough work that they've done that they understand what it is that they're really needing in the relationship. And then you're just propelling the potential for growth.
Yeah. And there's very few men who are dealing with porn addiction who have that capacity at this point. So again, that's just the whole emphasis on you need to get help to help these things even get into place to have progress, right? Like, because if you can't have, the ability to communicate at all about this in a healthy way, you don't make progress. There's no way to make progress. So yeah, back to my question for what when men are actually experiencing the intrusive thoughts, is there anything you want to express, like, don't do this? And then of course we want to go to, well, what should they do in those situations?
What should they not do when they're having intrusive thoughts? So it really depends on the person. The number one thing, obviously, for what you should not do is you should not keep everything to yourself. Don't try and just like push it down and shove it away and
pretend that
believe that it's going to be okay if you just continue to try and avoid these things, that eventually you're going to figure it out. Like, you're never going to get to where you want to go with that strategy. If you're just trying to push it away, forget about it, and be like, that's in the past, so I'm not going to do that again. It's going to be okay.
So ignoring them, basically, trying to just ignore it.
Don't avoid the big red flags that are coming up in your mind telling you, hey, like, we need these things to go away, and they're not going away. They keep coming back, and shoving away, just trying to shove them away isn't working. And then refusing to engage in conversations where we're being authentic and honest and open and vulnerable with our partner, that's not working.
Another thing not to do.
Right. Another thing not to do is, what we need to learn to do is to learn how do we engage in a conversation where we can be authentic, we can be open, we can be honest, we can be vulnerable, and we can learn that we're safe with our partner. And that is a process, because for the women, they are betrayed. These different, I know the act of the thought that I would even have in our process would be highly offensive to Katie, and I would feel attacked often when I would share what my experience was, because there's a part of her that, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong here, but that believed that there was something that I was doing wrong in that situation that was the reason that I was having those thoughts.
Yeah, I think to a certain point, I just felt like it was just you deciding to allow it. So, and, in some situations, some men, I'm not saying you were, but at some points you were, that's another what not to do. Don't just allow them to be there and think that that's no big deal, right? Like, because if you entertain those things, you're repeating the same patterns and thoughts that led you to this to begin with, right? You're not going to get anywhere if you allow them to be there and don't think that they're a big deal. Another not to do is don't lie about it. And that's probably like, to so many men, they're like, well, I have to lie about this. Like, how I can't tell her, I can't be real about that, and, you can't, I know that you want to, and you think that that's what's best because you're protecting yourself and you're thinking you're protecting her from being hurt. But what you're doing is not either of those things. You're not facing this. You're not living in reality. You're not allowing her to live in reality. And you're not making anything better between you or with the issue. What you're doing is you're creating a stronger divide between you and her, because that you're not authentic with her. You're not living in the same reality with her. And you're not able to work on something that you can't be honest about, that you can't acknowledge.
I think that's a really important part of the piece to highlight for the men, just to understand that when we talk about betrayal trauma, like what does betrayal really mean? One of the pieces of the core of that is the breaking of trust. Right. And so
you can't build trust if you're continuing to lie.
Right. Like thinking that you're protecting your partner by withholding information from them is not actually helping them. It's actually making things worse. That is the part, like that is a big part of the betrayal. Right. Is withholding that information that allows for trust to be built over time. And also highlights, like, oftentimes people ask the question, well, why do we need help? Well, that's a really big reason why. Because when you're looking at creating safety in the relationship for both partners, and I'm not talking about necessarily like safety of, oh, she's going to come at me and kill me. Obviously, domestic violence is a very real part of the process for some people. And that's the number one thing that you want to take care of before you even begin to start working on something like porn addiction recovery.
Right.
You got to take care of the domestic violence first and create physical safety for yourself. And then you can consider whether or not you're going to go through with working on the recovery from porn addiction. But so when we're talking about safety, we're talking about emotional safety, ability to be honest and vulnerable without fearing not being able to engage in the conversation because we don't know how to navigate it. And so that's why people need help, is because, right, a big reason that men lie is because they don't feel emotional safety to be open and honest, because they don't know what the heck they're doing. And for me, I was lucky enough to be naive enough, really, to say, hey, as long as I'm like doing exactly what I'm reading and learning about here, then it's all going to work out. And I firmly believe that if I just keep taking these steps, then it's going to be okay. And it's going to work itself out. And
that helped and didn't help sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's really, it's just such a difficult thing to navigate and work through, because both the man and the woman have such valid experiences for why they feel the ways that they do. And oftentimes there's such a disconnect for each of them to be able to see one another and to be able to communicate in a way where each person is validated and understood for their experience. And that is a skill. That is part of the development. That's part of the work that needs to be done to overcome the addiction, is to be able to build that safety in the conversations together where there is honesty and there's not the fear of not being able to navigate the conversation. And that can definitely take time.
So I'll speak to what the woman can do in a minute, but like back again, so if he's having an intrusive thought, what's just a quick tip that you can give him? Obviously, we know what not to do as far as lying and not being honest about it, allowing it to be there. So what can he do in those times that he's having the unwanted thoughts? What should he do?
So there's a lot of all the thoughts that we have in those situations where we're having intrusive and unwanted thoughts are there for a reason. And there's a lack of newly identified beliefs with emotional attachment, repetition, and reward that need to go in place in order for us to get rid of the unwanted thoughts that we have. So one of the things that I would do is really begin to evaluate what it means that you're doing when you're having these intrusive and unwanted thoughts in a way that isn't shaming yourself, but just acknowledging.
What does this actually mean?
What does it actually mean?
Doing, like, for example.
Yeah, so like if you're walking in a store, you see either an advertisement, billboard, or somebody in real life walking around, and you get triggered for sexualized thoughts of objectifying that person. Like really, you have to be conscious and intentional with, when I'm in this situation, I've got a plan that I'm actually going to take notice, which self-awareness is also a skill that needs to be developed, to be able to take notice when we're in these situations and say, I'm going to evaluate, what does this actually mean? And what it actually means is that I'm having cravings and desires for unfaithful thoughts and actions outside of my relationship. And if I actually, right, this is not my partner. And if I actually follow through on these things, what am I doing? I am betraying my partner. I'm not going to tell her about it. I'm going to lie about it. I'm going to hide it. And I'm going to XYZ, whatever it is that you actually do. And what is that going to result in? Well, if I continue to do that, then eventually it's going to come out. And when it does, it's likely going to be the end of the relationship. And that's where there's so much pain in the cover up. Get away from that. Sorry.
Yeah.
But back to what we're actually
meaning.
So the meaning that we're giving to it is that it is unfaithful, that if we continue to do it, it is going to result in the end of our relationship. It's going to destroy our partner. It's going to make us question ourselves, whether or not there's something inherently wrong with us. Depending on the different types of experiences that we've had in our life, it's going to give us a lot of different challenges. One of the most important things that we can do for ourselves is get some sort of mental health evaluation to see, okay, what are some of the, like, is there any other diagnosis that I need to be aware of that I have that is impacting how I am experiencing life and experiencing the challenges that are coming up in my journey. So that's another piece from before of what to do. But in this situation, really attaching to creating new belief systems of the pain and the destruction that this is going to cause in your life, and then focusing on what is it that I actually do want. Well, I do want to be close and connected to my wife. So what I can do is, even though it's going to be hard and it's going to be difficult and challenging, when I go home tonight and I look at my wife in the eye, or girlfriend, fiance, when I look them in the eye and I know that I love them, I'm going to share the difficult truth with them that when I was out today, that I had some experiences that I really didn't want, and that it's super uncomfortable to even be sharing with them what my experience was, but that I do know that it's something that they're saying that they are wanting and needing from me, is to be more open and honest about the experience that I'm having. So focusing on, okay, let's take that step. Let's get uncomfortable. Because when you go into that conversation, just thinking about even having that conversation can present with fear and insecurity about how that conversation is going to go, and feeling like my partner is going to leave me. And as you engage in those conversations, what you should hopefully see, depending on where you're at, because depending on how much has gone on in your relationship, it's going to be more challenging for some couples than others. But the ideal goal is that is going to be opening the door for building trust in the relationship, where she can then ask questions and be curious about what's going on in your world. And you can actually have an authentic conversation about what it is that you're going to continue to do in order to get those things to go away for good. But it all starts with creating emotional safety in the relationship. So there needs to be a pattern where you share something uncomfortable, where you don't feel safe, and over time, through conditioning, essentially, of a reward of not being punished, that you can share, you understand that my relationship is okay. When I share these things, she's not breaking up with me. She's not leaving me. She is wanting to see continued efforts from me in order to build more trust and transparency in the relationship, but she's not leaving me. She's not making me feel like I'm this piece of crap who's, there's something totally wrong with me and that I'm no good for her.
And sometimes that can be the reaction at first, as women are trying to navigate this, and they are hurt and they are in pain and they don't understand. They're not able to separate him from the addiction. So even if at first it doesn't seem like it's helpful, just trust the process, because it always has to start somewhere, right? Like, you're never going to get where you want to go by continuing to not have conversations and not face this issue and not be honest about things. So at first, she may not respond in a way that makes you feel like that was rewarding.
Right.
that was the right move.
Right.
No, it may feel like it was the wrong move, but that it's a step in the right direction, and just trust that there's a process here other people have gone through and it works, and there is help that is available to help you navigate it. So yeah, don't think that just because it didn't go well right at first that it's not going to continue to progress in the right direction. And women, don't feel like what we're saying is that you can't express your emotions, that you need to hold back and repress and make him feel safe and coddle him. Nope, that's not what we're saying. Because I know that can feel like that's what we're saying. Nope, we are talking about holding two truths, and we are talking about allowing your pain to be expressed, which is very important for him to see. Just, it's the shaming and attacking. That's the part that we're saying we want to help you get closer to not doing that, if that's something that you are used to doing, because it's just so hard for you to handle the emotions of it.
Right. And so if that is the experience for the guy where he does feel punished, even though he's not actually being punished, but he's feeling punished because of the experience that his partner's having, the emotional reaction that is coming up for her for very valid reasons and understandable reasons, then that then puts it back on the guy to speak up for himself and say, you know, it really hurts when I come to you and I am being honest with you and I'm wanting to be more transparent with what it is that I'm dealing with on a daily basis. And I just feel whatever it is. I feel like you're punishing me and it doesn't feel like we're moving forward in our relationship. Like whatever it is that's coming up for you, like share that emotional need that you have. Like don't just avoid and escape and deflect
or attack her back,
right?
Things like that. Yeah.
And as we say these things, just please know, like this is the ideal world, right?
This is
as we're sharing these things,
aim at
right? If this isn't the way the conversations go, it really highlights like this is why we want to get help, so that we can actually create change for ourselves, so that when we're having these conversations, they're beginning to go a better way,
right?
And part of that goes with being in conversation with people where that's actually the experience that they're having. So it can be modeled for you.
Exactly.
You can ask questions. You can investigate what's going on for myself. Doing those things on our own when we don't have the experience or the knowledge or the development can feel impossible.
Right. Yep. And I was just going to say, it's not linear either. Just know that you're not going to be like, oh, once we, start having good conversations, it's going to continue to just get better and better and better. Now it's going to probably be like this. It's a roller coaster. It's like some steps forward feel like, wow, this is awesome. We're going to get somewhere. And then the next day it's like, you're literally all the way down here again. So
right.
It's what will happen eventually if you're on the right trajectory, you have the right education and help, and you're both putting in the effort. What will happen is you'll go like this, and then they'll just get smaller and smaller and smaller until eventually you don't have so many extreme highs and lows.
Yeah. I think it's a really important thing to point out that it's not a realistic expectation for her or for him to say, well, we watched this one live from Rick and Katie and this is what they said to do, so now we should be doing it perfectly. A lot of times,
practice.
Yeah, it takes practice. Our conversations were terrible for years, right? Like,
yes,
and
because we didn't have the right guidance and help.
We
didn't.
We had very little. Which is why when we got through this, we're like, okay, we need to go out there and help people and show them and help them to investigate what's going on for themselves so that they can get through this a lot faster than what we did.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as for the women's side, what can we do? The biggest thing that you need to understand is this isn't about you, and it is not something that you need to change about yourself. It is not something that you need to manage for him either, right? So thinking about like what not to do, don't blame yourself for it. Don't try and morph into all of these different women that he's attracted to. Don't think that you have to be someone you're not. It doesn't matter how incredibly beautiful you are. You could be literally a supermodel and you're still one human being. And anyone that's going to go outside of their relationship and look at thousands upon thousands of other people and allow that to be what they are aroused by will never be satisfied with one human being, regardless of how beautiful you are. So just know that it's not because you need to change something. It's not you that needs to change as far as the reason for this issue and the reason for his intrusive thoughts. It's not about you. So you don't have control over his thoughts, and that's not what you need to be focused on. What you need to be focused on is taking care of yourself, meaning caring for your emotional needs and giving yourself permission to have the hurt and acknowledge and validate why that's there. And continue to put the right boundaries in place that are going to give you guys hope for this to change. Because if you're just if you're kind of like a lot of women they're at the breaking point. So they just kind of like just take a step back and say, you're just going to do what you're going to do. I'm going to live my life over here. But they don't get out of the relationship and they stay in that environment where they're basically constantly being neglected, and they are not getting connection that they should with their partner. They're not on a trajectory to figure this out, right? So you're going to stay in a trajectory of being completely disconnected, numb, not having the relationship you deserve if you do that. And then there's also some women that just continue to pretend that he's fine because he's saying he's fine, right? So the answer is boundaries, because if he does not have help to figure this out and know exactly what the right things are to continue to be working on so that these intrusive thoughts are no longer there, then it's not going to change, right? And so your boundaries are often the intervention that has to be in place for him to actually be willing to get the help. And that sounds really difficult, and it is, but it's so necessary. It is probably one of the most difficult things you're going to have to do, though. And it's tough love. That's exactly what that is. It's saying, look, I love myself and I love you too much to not put boundaries in place for what's going to actually get us where we want to go. And I respect myself too much to allow this to continue to make me feel the way it does, because it is destroying me. And I know for me, my mental health suffered so much, and I had already gone through extreme betrayal trauma in my past. So when we were going through this, I was literally like mentally, I was not okay. And I was struggling every moment of every day. And I finally had to say, like, this can't continue. This cannot continue. So drawing those boundaries at some point is really a necessity. And a lot of women think, oh, well, if I draw the boundary that you can't do this again or I'm gone, then that'll fix it, right? And but once again, like we were talking about earlier, it's really not fair to say
that a developmental process that's
to somebody whose brain is not functioning in a way that can handle knowing how to do this differently and knowing how to make these changes happen. The boundary is going to have to be there, that he's getting the right help to make those changes happen. Because I guess the word fair it's probably not fair to use the word fair, because none of this is fair.
Fairness is relative to experience, yeah.
But what I'm saying is
either one,
right? It's none of this is fair. But what I'm trying to say is that it's not going to get you the outcome you want by drawing that kind of boundary, unless he's got the right tools. It doesn't make it just now he just won't do it, right? And now the intrusive thoughts are gone. So it's about trying to. It's about knowing what the steps are that are going to help with that reprogramming so that those intrusive thoughts are no longer going to be an issue for him.
I just want to add on to one thing earlier about what the guy can do and what he can or should or shouldn't do. Mm-hmm. One of the things for men that you absolutely should not expect is that the experience with your partner is going to be some, the rewarding thing that makes it sustainable and something that you actually are completely, you reach a place of gratification where you don't need anything outside of your relationship. That feels very different than a euphoric high that you get when you use pornography.
So you talk about satisfaction, right? Like fulfilling,
right.
Fulfillment.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's words.
Words are hard.
Yes. So you really want the relationship to be fulfilling, which is a much different experience than seeking a euphoric high where you're seeking masturbation, orgasm, looking at different things that turn your brain on, right? So as you are beginning to shift your attention into your relationship towards your partner, don't expect that you should have the same... Don't have the same expectation that when you are being intimate with your partner, that you should have these euphoric highs that are associated with it.
Or that she's supposed to make you feel that way.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not what we're going for as like the centerpiece that drives you towards her. Mm-hmm. That's like the cherry on top of being sexually intimate with her, but what we're actually going for is feeling fulfillment in our relationship with our partner, connected, bonded. When we see them, we absolutely appreciate them. We see their beauty, but it's not this euphoric high experience. It's more of a satisfaction of, I don't need anybody else other than you. Like, you're it for me.
And it's actually different brain chemicals that are released that make you feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's more of the oxytocin chemical versus a euphoric high is dopamine, right? So, but there is dopamine too to be had once you have that really close, authentic, monogamous relationship. Like, that's where you can get those really great, euphoric highs here and there in your experiences together. But it's not like that's the main thing you're seeking out.
Right.
That's what you're saying.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And when you do have those experiences, you want to make sure that you share them with your partner, because there's going to be times when you look at your partner and it just hits you and you're like, oh my gosh, like, you're just beautiful right now. I love you so much. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just being able to express those things as often as you're feeling them, like, make sure to share that, because they appreciate when you're seeing them, and a lot of times they might look at you and be like, you're crazy. Mm-hmm. I don't have makeup on. My eyelashes are falling out.
Right. But yeah, that's one of those things too, where it's like, I, for a long time, believed I needed to compete and I needed to be a porn star, basically, or try to be, in order to be enough and in order to give you euphoric highs. And, that's not something that we need to do. It is not what we do. Not have to compete when we are the only one, right? Like, then we've won the competition. And it's not like we're like, oh, we'll just let ourselves go there and not care. No, but we don't need to, like, there's so many days where, like he's saying, like, I haven't taken a shower for a day or two. I'm in my pajamas and my eyelashes are falling off or whatever. And he'll look at me and he still sees me, and he still sometimes says, like, you're so beautiful. And I'm like, yeah, you're crazy, but thank you. I'll go shower and try to make that feel true for me. Anyhow, but yeah, it's just amazing what changes when you no longer have anything outside of your relationship that you are in competition with, or that they are giving their attention to, because you're it then. Like, you get to feel completely different, on both sides of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just wanted to bring that up and mention it, because I know that for a lot of men, that is part of the challenge, and it was for me as well, is just getting used to this new normal of what it means to be in an intimate relationship and be sexually drawn to somebody that isn't the experience of euphoric highs that are associated with dopamine. So we're really looking for the connection, the fulfillment, the satisfaction that we have with our partners. And then when we are sexually intimate, then we do also get that added benefit of the euphoric highs that are associated with dopamine, and it's specifically with our partner.
Yep.
That can bring in a whole new set of challenges, engaging in those activities with our partners. Yeah. That is a topic for another day.
Right. Yeah. There's so many topics. So if that is something where you're like, all right, I want that, we need this, we need help with that, let us know, and we will get you in touch with our recovery advisor, Asia. She'll have a call with you. She'll talk with you about your situation. She'll give you some insights and advice based on, the work that she does with couples and the program that we have. And she'll also see if maybe the program could be a good fit for you. And if it seems like it might be, then she'll invite you to participate in another call with her, and she can go over more details about our program. This type of thing is an invite-only program, because obviously we want to make sure that this is actually going to be something that we believe is going to work well for you, and that working together, it's a good fit both directions. So that's where it makes sense that we want to chat with you first, kind of see where things are at in your relationship and how we can best support and help you. So if that is something that you'd like to do, that call with Asia is free, and you can reach out and sign up with her for a call. You can reach out to us and we can get you in touch with her, however you want to do it, or you can make a comment here on this live and we'll make sure that she reaches out to you.
You guys have a great rest of your Sunday.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon.